Let me hit record. All right. This is Mastermind book meeting. I want to say the book club, I think this is number 5, if I'm no, number 6. Oh my God. Time really flies when you're having fun. Isn't that the truth? The one they say don't open with logistics. I'll get to logistics after 2 fun opening questions. Okay. One would be I just want to know I want to know a great fiction book that you're either currently reading or maybe have read in the past few years or so. I'm reading this one, Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. And it is a page turner. It's awesome. I love it. And it's taking a look at the future. And the weird thing is, I have a feeling that old Zuckerberg and Facebook got the idea from Meta from this dang book, because he paints and this was written in the 90s, right? That's why my mind is blowing, because he painted this picture of people in 3D and virtual realities, right? Where they'd have lives and they'd do work and this kind of stuff, but then you could show up in this artificial world with superpowers and do these things and whatever. So anyways, it's just bizarre, but I'm really enjoying the book. And everybody says to read more fiction, and I don't make as much time as I should for it. So I've been reading that and I love it. And then the other investment I made is this crazy, I haven't started reading it, so I can't necessarily say it's awesome, but Discworld has 10 or 12 books a part of it. Now, Terry Pratchett, he wrote with Neil Gaiman, was it called Good Omens or something? It was on Prime, maybe about a year ago. And that book was hilarious. And while I was living in Scotland, a lot of the UK and, that kind of those references were relevant. So it was really funny to me. Last thing I'll say, because Kristen and Mitch know Franklin, who joined us at the live event, he loves this series, Discworld. So I know the author's awesome. I haven't read it yet. So looking forward to it. So that's me. That's enough. How about you? Fiction wise, are you reading anything, or what would you recommend?
So I'm also so guilty of just only reading nonfiction. And if I'm in our room, and if you saw my wife's bedstand, was an English lit major, it's this ridiculously revolving giant stack of fiction books, and she's always like, "You gotta read this," and I just so few. So this happens to be on my stand, and I started it. I don't even know how long ago, but I'm gonna start it again, Danny, because of this. I'm not going to be fat. I just finished The Courage is Calling. I think we talked about this last week. So what do you say?
I said you started in 1986.
It could be. But it's interesting. It's about a guy who just leaves his kind of, I think, fairly cushy publishing job. I don't know. And rides his bike to the tip of South America, I think from Portland, Oregon, something I could see myself doing if I ever had the time. And it's about to shake the sleeping self. It's so far back when I started it.
Wow.
I didn't have that much gray hair. It was a good start. So
is it kind of waking up, to wake yourself up type of thing, or?
Yeah, to shake. Yeah. He met a guy who, at if I remember right, at he was helping out with a nonprofit, and the guy was also helping out someone much older than him. I want to say in his 60s, and he had done the same ride, and he just saw himself as I could never, just that's not me. I'm not a cyclist. I'm not, and he talks about his journey of putting it out there, making the plan, and then starting to tell people about it as a way to commit to it. And he rode his bike. Yeah. I mean, thousands and thousands of miles. So, so I'm excited. Yeah. I have it tabbed here, and it's I haven't started chapter 1 yet, so that shows you my fiction reading. That's all just the intro.
Thanks, Mitch. Jinxed. Mindy is ready.
This is it's by Amy McCullough, and this is I often find myself reading literature books that the kids are reading in class.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So this is the 7th and 8th graders had a choice of 4 different books. They all have a relationship to technology, kind of futuristic technology. And this particular book is about a group of kids in a school setting who become awarded with by birth a animal creature like the one here, which is kind of a cat, and these creatures kind of behave like smartphones, and yet they communicate with their human through this device in their ear. Anyhow, it's kind of it's a page turner. It's an interesting read.
We kind of already communicate with humans with a device in our ear.
I know. This was written in, let me see, this was written in 2018.
Wow. Cool. Thank you, Mindy. Amy or Kristen, do you read at all any fiction?
I have 2 books going on right now. I'm rereading The Honest Truth, which is a book that I read aloud to the kids. And it's such a great book about a young boy that's got cancer, and he gets really just fed up with it, and he's going to run away from it. And it has a chapter and then a half chapter. So it's like chapter 1 and then 1.5. And he runs away with his best friend, who's his dog. And I read it on my own in like a hot second. It was so good. So I'm very excited to read it to the kids again. And the book that I'm reading again, I love repetition, is The Secret Garden by Kate Morton. And I love her style of writing because it does something that I really like, just keeps switching points of view. So when I get to the next point of view, I'm like, wait, I need to skip this one to figure out what that one was saying. So it starts with like present moment, past, and then deep past. So I love that. There's 3 different stories, which goes really good with how my mind works to stay focused on the story. I like all the stories going at the same time, but then I always want to skip the one that I'm on to keep on going with the one that I just finished, the storyline I just finished. So any of her stories are great, but that's my favorite one, The Secret Garden.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
Oh, I love fiction. I kind of one of these people that have so many books going at once. I had to think about, what was I going to tell you guys? So I tend to get into, I tend to go through author. So I'll read every single book by a particular author. Wow. So the author that I highly recommend to everybody, and I just got my husband hooked on him, is Harlan Coben. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Have you guys heard of him? Okay. Well, he has a series. It's a Myron Bolitar series. And so you start with that first book, and the series is outstanding. And he's a former college basketball player. So he's really witty. And then his best friend is named Win. It's like Winwood Horn Lockwood III. He's very wealthy, but he kills people. But it's almost humorous. It's weird. And so the last book that I read by Harlan Coben is actually, now Win has his own book, and it's called Win, W-I-N. And that was so good. So I love Harlan Coben, and then I love Jodi Picoult. And probably Small Great Things was one of those reads that just left me breathless. And I guess she has a new one now that's all about time in the pandemic. That's supposed to be outstanding. But she always does a lot of research around different topics. Like the 19 Minutes was about school shootings, and but they're fiction, but they're so well researched and real and good. So I have so many that I love.
Brilliant. Well, we know who we can turn to this group when we need some book recommendations. That is super cool. Thank you for everyone answering that. I don't know why. I think just because I've been reading it, I figured I might as well ask, but that wasn't the actual question I wanted to open with. Now is the actual question I wanted to open with. This one is just as good, maybe even better. I want to know, in high school, your favorite artist in song. What brings you back to those years? You can only pick one. You can only pick one artist in song.
This makes me realize like how little I've evolved since high school. Because I think I still listen to, I mean, I'm so sure I've added to it. So I discovered the Grateful Dead in high school and got really into their shows. I'm out here in Northern California, so it was very easy to be a Nouveau Deadhead for a while there. I had a Volkswagen bus, the whole bit, super long hair and a big beard like Danny. And I found Bob Dylan through them, and I just never looked back. So I don't have one song, but that would be defining for my high school time for sure. Discovering Dylan through the Grateful Dead. I was at a concert and I heard this song and I was just like, what is that? And I went to Tower Records and was looking through all the tapes, I think, or vinyl back then. I don't think CDs were big. And I couldn't find the song, and someone helping me there. This is the beauty of a record store, kind of like your comic book shop, Danny.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, no, that's a Bob Dylan song. I'm like, oh, who's Bob Dylan?
Oh, wow.
And so I started right then. I saw, oh my God, this guy's got all these albums. So I bought the first one, and I just would literally, this sounds so cliched now, I'd sit in my van with my acoustic guitar and just listen to Dylan cassettes and learn them all on the guitar until I knew every song on the album. Then I went sequentially through like his whole thing. So, but I'm still doing that, which is like, maybe I need to branch out. That's what I'm saying.
No, that's great music. Miriam's brother was in town. He just went back to Calgary. He was with us for almost 2 weeks. We stopped by a record store and picked up some cool stuff, a lot of old R&B, but I also picked up some Dead and Dylan myself, and Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique too. That's a great hip hop album. But since I'm talking, I'll just share too. Like mine would be from high school. It's Pearl Jam. It's the Alive video when Eddie Vedder's climbing up the scaffolding, right? And I just love those guys' long hair and stuff. That's probably like half the reason I grew mine out. Looking at so many Guitar World magazines, and they were always on the cover. So Alive was like the song in high school for sure.
Well, I'm a total 80s rocker girl who was really bummed out by Pearl Jam and Nirvana. Like, where's the makeup and the glam? Like, they're all grungy now. I didn't like it. So I was totally into, I would say if I thought of like one band for high school was absolutely Van Halen. It was 1984. It was, 5150, all the good stuff. Like that is, I'm a rocker girl.
Yeah. Kristen, I don't know if you saw, I shared on Facebook on my personal profile, not in the book club, but so I guess I didn't know that Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl specifically, every Hanukkah does like a thing for covers, right? And anyways, he did Jump by Van Halen, covered it like 4 nights ago. It's amazing. I gotta
watch it.
It's so good. I'll get the link and put it in there. But Amy,
speaking of him, he has a good book out now.
Does he? Oh.
It's called Storyteller. And I'm currently listening to that on Audible, which I highly recommend because he plays music in it. I'm obsessed with
Oh,
Dave
that'd be
Grohl.
so good.
Yeah. So I just bring on the rock.
Okay, cool. I will definitely look that up. Amy or Mindy, bring us to high school with you.
I there it's hard to narrow it down to one piece. I'm going to just go with Stevie Nicks, and my mom really influenced my music loving. My birth played the bass guitar, my godfather played the drums, and I was just into their music, and Stevie Nicks just won my heart. I have a Wild Heart tattoo. As soon as I turned 18, I got it, and got a tambourine, and it just speaks to me. I love that music. All through a little different vibe than what my friends were listening to, but we all knew it. So that's kind of what's coming up. But everything that everyone's mentioned, same. Music was a big part, and is a big part of like how we express and share and remember. A song will come on and I'll be like, oh my, remember this, remember that. So I love that. I love this question.
Thanks, Amy. Mindy, do you have a band?
Oh dear. If Amy, I don't know if you've ever listened to Buckingham Nicks, kind of pre Fleetwood Mac. That's a pretty stellar set of music, or at least obviously in my opinion. So way to go. I'm a guitar player, so I'm a rocker.
We need to start a band.
It is hard to choose, but you guys got me thinking. So pre-grunge, kind of date myself here a little bit, pre-80s glam rock. I've always been a huge Heart fan, so I would go there. Pretty quickly. There are so many others, but I'll stick with that one this time around.
Awesome. Yeah, cool.
I think we could spend the whole hour just talking about this and be totally happy and engaged. Not, we shouldn't get to the book.
Right.
Just,
With
I loved
I'm
hearing all
obsessed
that.
with Ann and Nancy Wilson. I'm obsessed with Ann and Nancy Wilson. I got to see them 4th row at a concert, and it was an acoustic set. It was like I was in their living room.
Awesome.
Danny, can we throw out one other question real quick?
Well, yeah. Let's keep the momentum going. I have another. I'm curious.
Oh, you do?
No, I do based on the conversation, but I'm almost wondering if it's the question you're about to ask.
Yeah, let's see if we're synced up. You ask your question and then I'll ask mine.
Well, I was going to ask people's first concert.
Oh, I was thinking something different.
Okay,
Cool.
bummer, but that's cool. I bet your question is also good.
We'll go
My-
with yours though. This is your show, so.
It's our show. It's everybody's show. My first concert. So back to I don't know if it's in the book, but Mitch and Kristen know the comic book story. So that was my first job, like a long time ago. I was 12 years old, counting inventory. And Chuck Furman owned Fat Dutchie's comic book shop. He would pay me in all the comics I could read, $20 per week, and he'd buy me lunch too, which was either pizza, right, or Italian beef is a big thing in Chicago. If you've never had it, it's amazing. Portillo's specifically is incredible. And anyway, I also started to really learn a lot about music. He always had the radio going and that kind of thing. So I was there at this comic book shop all the time. And my mom and my dad wasn't in the picture. So my mom asked this guy, hey, would you take Danny to a concert if I bought the tickets? And he said, okay. Can you believe that? We're not related, like anything like that. But she trusted him and it was a good experience. So Aerosmith, Eat the Rich, first concert with Chuck Furman, who's an adult. And I'm like this little weird little kid that won't leave him alone. And he brought me. What an awesome saint, right? Like he brought me to the show. We stood up and we kind of like nodded our heads like dudes do at a concert. And then we drove home and I passed out in the car. I woke up and I was home. So there you go.
Passed out meaning took a nap
Yeah.
because you were little.
Yeah. Well, I was very sober. I was 12 years old, probably high on Coca-Cola and hot dogs, but yeah. Aerosmith.
Mine was the Cyndi Lauper Girls Just Want to Have Fun tour.
Oh, nice.
And I had a green fluorescent sweatshirt and a big pink bow and Keds and a jean skirt and cut off fluorescent gloves.
Oh, wow.
Came out in a big hat and a big dress. I remember every morsel of it.
It's awesome.
Wow,
Are there
you gotta meet
pictures?
my daughters. My daughter was Cyndi Lauper for Halloween last year. I was just gonna look for a picture that they'll think you're like famous. Like, oh my gosh, they saw her. That's for all the rockers in the audience. My first concert was Van Halen.
Nice.
I was pretty young. I was born in 72, but my brother was 4 years older. So I was right at that cusp, right, where like rock and grunge, that whole thing was happening, you know. Right in
Did
high
you
school.
see David Lee Roth or did you see Hager?
No, Hager. Not unfortunately, but I would have much more rather seen David Lee Roth. But no, I wasn't. I didn't feel like a few years earlier, maybe I could have caught that. But same thing, I went with my brother and it was super loud and I was kind of like, you know, Eddie Van Halen came out with put his cigarette in his guitar and sat there and played Eruption. The whole thing, I was like, oh my God, you know, I had all the posters in my room in elementary school. So
Rush.
I've seen Rush. Nice.
I've seen all those other people too, though. So awesome.
I was a little girl and my mom's friend took me to see Rod Stewart. Oh my God, it was so great. He puts on a performance. And I remember him kicking soccer balls into the audience and I'm like, I need to get, like, I'm like channeling, like, this is my first concert. I'm a little girl, I need to get one. But we were like way up, you know. I was very hopeful it didn't happen, but I remember that show and I just saw him. He looks exactly the same. The hair, the voice, like unbelievable. But yeah, it was so much fun.
Is he English or Scottish? Because he's always at the Celtic and Rangers. I forget which team he supports, but that's one of the Glasgow teams, and he's at all the games.
Yeah, I think he's Scottish. I feel like you're right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that was probably the first time I've seen a person in real life speak with an accent. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fancy. And he's going to sing to me and he knows about soccer, which is not American. So it left a big impression on me.
Yeah. Nice. So that was everybody, right? Rod Stewart, Rush, Cyndi Lauper, Van Halen, and Aerosmith. What a group. My sister, she went to New Kids on the Block. I still remember how excited she was for that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay, Mitch, what was your question?
Well, we're all like kindred spirits when it comes to music here. Right?
Yeah.
There's no millennials in the audience. Whew. Might hear something different, but I was just curious what you're listening to now, because my wife has introduced me to, I think, the greatest artist. We went up to Portland, Oregon a couple weeks ago, no kids, for a show. Spent 3 days in the city and went to a concert, had to wear a mask and stuff, but it was just this little tiny venue. It was unbelievable. So I was just curious, does anybody else because we might as well swap. And I have to share. His name's Simmel. Have you heard of this guy? I'm gonna put this in the chat. He just did this all pretty much acoustic recording at a church in Seattle, where he's from, called Sacred Spaces. My wife, like, I cried through some of the concert. She was like half of it at least sobbing. He's got such a beautiful voice, and his songs are just tragic, some of them.
Oh,
So Simmel, I think you'll enjoy. So I was just curious if anybody else had, like, you've got to hear this, and if not, that's okay. That's all credit to my wife. I didn't discover any.
I've been listening to a gal. Her name is I forget. She plays with a band too, but her name is Maggie Rose. And she's from the South, so she's kind of the Muscle Shoals kind of artist, is recorded in that famous studio. And she's, she's more R&B-ish, but just a fantastic voice, really, really beautiful. And then my three kids, not sure how this happened, but my three boys who are older now, but they went country on me. So I don't know what happened. But I have found myself listening to some country just because, that's what they do. So like who do they listen to? Like Zach Brown.
Yeah, like the new country, or
newer
country.
Yeah,
Not like
Zach
Johnny
Brown.
Cash country.
Yeah. No Johnny Cash, although I like Johnny Cash. Yeah.
brother-in-law loves Zach Brown, so I think I've listened to a lot of him too. How about Chris and Amy? I'll share mine last. I've been talking a lot.
My son is a treasure hunter, and he found at Goodwill a big box filled with cassette tapes, beyond ecstatic. And in there he found, how we used to make, I used to make tapes for your own playlist, and you would get gifts from friends or from, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. So he's just jammed. The quality's horrible. I'm like, wow, that's what music sounded like when we did that. But it's just like rehearing, like what the first one that he played was Van Halen. Just reliving that through his lens is just a new way to look at it. So it's been a lot of fun. And my husband's like one of those, name that song, he can name every song. So he knows all the songs. Me, I'm like, that sounds familiar. I'm gonna know the words in a second when they get to the chorus. But that's been fun. A little different than the question you're specifically asking, but it's a new experience. It's fun.
Well, I'm obsessed with the Goo Goo Dolls, like obsessed, have been since '95. And they have a beautiful Christmas album. And there's a song on there called Christmas All Over Again that I just really love listening to right now. And so, yeah, I love them. I've met them. I've been front row. We've made eye contact. So his birthday was yesterday. I'm obsessed.
A little bit. That's awesome. Because my wife's influence, I've learned a lot about like Zimbabwean music, right? So there's a current artist who's quite popular over there named Jah Preza, Jah. Pray, like how you would spell pray, and then Zah. That's one word. Like Jah's one word, Preza's the other word. But Spotify is a really cool tool, and I love when the year's about to flip, right? they send you, here's your most listened genres, most listened songs, and that kind of stuff. So anyways, one of those top songs from 2021 is called Mukwasha. And I listen to Mukwasha a lot because it's about me. So when you marry into a family, right, and you're an in-law, you get a special name, and Mukwasha is like what they call the men when they're marrying into a family. The video is really funny because, you know, it's like, hey, son-in-law, like go plow the fields, or like this one guy gets out of jail and he wants to beat up, you know, the guy who married into the family. There's another dude who has a toothache, so he wants the son-in-law to pay for it. And there's finally another guy who he farts, he passes gas, and he blames the son-in-law, and everybody also blames him. So but anyways, Mukwasha, and it's just it's a cool beat and stuff. So that's what I would say. Yeah, so I'm glad that we stayed there for a while. And you know, I think you all were feeling it. But the point is like how some really great questions and like going back, you know, back in the day and that kind of thing fosters a sense of belonging, right? And that's the connection, right, to what we read from for this book club, is that it was all about belonging and that kind of deal. And so you know, there was so much, my cheeks hurt a little bit. We were smiling so much and hearing the stories. And so just finding the space to create that within your business or your school or your classroom. It's funny how these things get cut, but they really are really important, you know? So thank you for playing with the intro question for so long. Maybe what I'll do, instead of asking some of the questions I have about the book, and it's fine if we're silent for a while, but why don't you look into what we read for this week, which I think was pages 130, I think, to 169, or somewhere in that range. But were there any lines that really stuck out to you, or any questions you want to pose to the group from what we read, and we can then discuss. And if not, I do have some prepared as well.
And one thing that just one little tiny sentence stood out to me, among others, but on page 132, belonging is at the center of design. And I think about, like, I mean, I know I'm not in the school leader mastermind, but in our edupreneur mastermind, but just knowing people in masterminds now and experiencing a live event, it's so evident that there's this palpable sense of belonging. But what if I read that in isolation, that seems like such a daunting design element, right? I'm going to give birth to this thing that doesn't really exist for school leaders. And at the very center of the design is belonging. Like, how do you do that and meet over Zoom? And it so clearly has happened. And you go on share experience being in the classroom and whatnot. And of course, that's a huge part of a successful classroom. But for whatever reason, that stood out to me as like, that would be hard to design, and yet it's here. So
Thank you, Mitch.
I think that's the gravity of these things, man, is the belonging. There's the A and the C too, but that's the center of the design. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, maybe there should be another book at some point, diving even deeper into belonging, So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's cool. Appreciate it. I was gonna say that's why people keep showing up. Kim and Larry both emailed me because they had some conflicts going on for tonight specifically. So I'm sure they'll be at the next one.
It's interesting. I mean, I'll just keep going on my thoughts on that, because you're thinking about school leaders, and theoretically speaking, they have a community, right? You're at the head of the community. And then how much, like, even more necessary is this other community of people doing the same work to support and show up. And to be honest, I would imagine you have times where you talk about music for half of it. And it's as powerful as when someone's on the hot seat in a really tough spot, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Talk about some pretty heavy topics, depending on what people bring to the table.
I got to thinking about just things that are as simple as just word choice, and then the choice of words evolves into into action. Meaning you played off of early in the chapter, you played off of for versus with, on the theme of belonging. And then I got to thinking about the term expectations gets used so frequently in education. And how can I help kind of get a movement going of shifting the language to agreements and pushing it in a different direction. So that's kind of what stuck with me so far in the chapter.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mindy. That was going to be one of my questions, is how did you respond to that? Agreements, the assertion that agreements can be more powerful than expectations. Because when I first heard that, it was an audio recording, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And it was in a course I took to make my coaching skills better, probably by Rich Litvin. But Rich Litvin was trained a lot by this guy, Steve Chandler, who was his coach. And anyways, that agreements versus expectations, I quote him in the book, right? Credit where credit's due. But I'm like, whoa, that is powerful what he's saying there. And the difference between the two. And the thing that always stuck with me is, like, if you think about expectations, when they're violated, you're pissed, right? You broke the expectations and I'm disappointed. And then when they're met, you're ambivalent. It's like, well, that's your job, right? You're supposed to do that. And so neither outcome is good. So what do we use them for?
I first started teaching, I was at a really tough, pretty violent school, gang-wise kind of stuff going on. big urban comprehensive high school, but it's the most dialed in staff of all time, just like a really, really unique part of my career. But I remember one teacher in particular didn't have expectations or routines or procedures. They had agreements, and a giant part of one wall in the classroom, like some serious real estate, said something to the effect of agreements. They weren't listed there. They had talked about it as a community in each class. It wasn't like, here's our agreements, you got to do this, that kind of thing. It was, they came to these agreements and then everybody signed. It was all student signatures as well as the teacher. And it was profound. I mean, what the difference it made in that class. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, we developed social contracts. It's so you had 4 questions that you would ask, and you can do that with adults as well. I mean, there's social contracts, all over the place. But how do you want me to treat you as your leader? How do you want the leader to be treated by you? How do we want to treat each other? And then how do we want to treat each other when there's conflict? And what they figure out, because in their small groups, is that ultimately everybody wants to be treated the same. It doesn't matter what your title or your role is, and the same holds true for adults.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
I really liked that the first agreement is we picked you to be you. So that to me just takes a little bit off of if, I say something and then I say it a little bit more, a little bit differently, everyone's on board with me because that's how like my mind starts to say it. And then the other voice in me is like, what? No, wait, this is a little better. And everyone is just accepting that's who I am. So I love that's the first agreement. And another thing that really spoke to me, it was just like a coincidence, the ripple effect. I do mindfulness with my kids, and I'm a 6th grade teacher, and 8th grade students stopped me in the hallway and said, Miss Cap, when I had you in 6th grade, remember you did that pebble? Well, I still have it. I still think about it. So what it is, it's just what the ripple effect is. We do a mindful moment where the kids get a little pebble from me, and it just reminds them to speak kind words. So I was debating to do it this year. I'm like, oh, am I getting too foofy? And boom, I see one of my 8th grade students and he tells me he remembers it. And I'm like, got to do it. So, it doesn't go out. It also comes back in. So that was something I loved that you had that in there.
That's super cool. I'm glad you shared that story. So in the edupreneur group, it's relevant to our discussion. We're reading this, Tom Peters' The Pursuit of Wow. Looks pretty old, right? Well, it is. It was, this is from like the 90s or something. That looks like what you'd wear in the 90s, right? With all those colors and stuff. Like that just seems to make sense a little bit. But the interesting thing, to your point, Amy, who cares when it was written? I know it was in the 90s sometime. There's a section about getting things done. I'm not done with this section yet, but he intros with this idea of power and influence, and then he quickly moves into like gratitude and thanking people and showing appreciation and just being generous in general and that kind of thing. And one of the lines is about like how thank you notes he wrote 10 years ago, people will tell him about it. You know what I mean? A decade later. And so it's like, should I cut this thing about the ripple effect or whatever? And it's stuck with a kid. You know what I mean? But it's like those positive moments, those kind moments, they're so good. So appreciate you sharing that, Amy.
Used to pick out a book every year for the graduating seniors. And we had probably, we went anywhere from 150 to 250, and I'd pick out something, usually a children's book. And then I would write something to each senior. And I always loved that, doing that. You know, they probably could care less today, but I have had some that I've seen. They're like, I still have that book. But it was so nice to kind of process and think about every single senior that was graduating and write something specifically to them. And it held me accountable to when their senior year came around. And if I didn't know them, I better know them, because I knew I had to write something to them. So that was always a cool part of my job, I guess, that I liked doing.
It's very cool. And above and beyond too. That's really neat.
Gee, just as a parent, wow, that is just huge. It's so huge. Wow. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I'd incorporate whatever book into the graduation speech. So it was fun.
Very thoughtful. So another question I had is, I'm curious, just any other tips or tricks that you have, that stuff that you do, like Kristen just mentioned, and I guess Amy did as well with the Ripple, but what do you do that you think is special to see and hear, you know, those you serve? I have in the past written postcards and done like a hand painted watercolor card, but that really took a lot of time. So I think I've exhausted myself. I'm so burnt out from that, and I haven't recovered yet. I've moved homes, and I still haven't recovered. But the people that got them really loved them.
One thing that the least I've been told is something that they felt like was a good thing with people that I led, was we always had, and I still do it now, but we always had Thank You Thursdays. And I started that when I came on board, and it just kind of morphed. I used to have cards all over the building that they could use at any time. And I would just send out reminders every Thursday that today's Thank You Thursday, and who should you thank today? And I might even say, you know, have you thanked a family member lately? And it just kind of took off. And I'd have multiple teachers, you know, say to me over the years that it was just nice to kind of pause and think about, you know, appreciation and affirmation, but it wasn't always coming from me. It was coming from one another. And then I think, you know, another thing that was really positive is, you know, each year we'd have a theme, and, you know, this is tough. High school people are tough. But, you know, we would try to have words that aligned with something. So one year we had a teamwork theme that was all around painting. And so I had the art teacher make like palettes. And another year I found these cheap like hashtags. So we had hashtag awards. But what was powerful in it is it wasn't that it was me, the leader, that was picking people. It was, and we did these at the start of every staff meeting to say, who would you like to acknowledge, and what was it that they did that either helped you or in what, and it just, those are my favorite moments, because to see your staff giving eye contact and speaking directly to them and making the time for that. And it, you know, it may seem really corny, but it's the most powerful thing ever to say, you know, to have this conversation with somebody and say, you know, you're just really helping with this, and so I'm giving you this award. And I think when you get them talking and affirming one another, then you can have a real impact on the culture.
You know why high school is tough?
Why?
Because they know everything. They're basically
Right.
college professors.
That is right.
They're so freaking smart.
Yep.
I do something similar to the Thank You Thursdays, but we do it each month. It accumulates over a month. And in each of the department chairs, spaces, offices, there's a large bulletin board with a calendar on it. And there are little, they either use Post-it notes or little cards with pins, and they will pin or put a Post-it on the bulletin board about one of their colleagues, or something that they noticed and are thankful for. And then I bring those each month to our last meeting of the month, and kind of share them out loud. And I think what they like most about it is the sharing part, like, oh, these things are being said about my colleagues and about me. And I do think it plays really nicely with the belonging thing. Like, we're doing this together. This is not, an isolated experience for each one of us. So.
Thank you, Mindy.
Theme I'm hearing as if it's kind of corny, as Kristen and Amy are saying. It might feel that way. It's like that's the stuff we need to lean into, because if you don't, it just feels like it can be all business, And I'm totally guilty of that as a know-it-all high school teacher.
See,
Just get down to the business of it. So
I was accused of being fluffy a lot. Touchy-feely and fluffy. And I'm like, well, I'm really not.
yeah, that's cool.
But I do think that connection and belonging, everything I did had a method to the madness, even if they couldn't see it for what it was. You get people together and you get people communicating, and that's that belonging that you'll have it's just better. I mean, high school teachers don't see each other in the day. If you don't get them out of their rooms and with each other, they could go months without seeing somebody down the hall.
mm-hmm. You might look at a book too, since we've been talking about some resources throughout tonight. There's one called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And it talked about building awesome cultures, but I think a lot about Greg Popovich from the San Antonio Spurs. And, he's a pretty stoic leader, so to speak. So not all the fuzzy wuzzy stuff that we've been talking about tonight, but there's an incredible sense of belonging, within his team. And a big reason he was able to take, groups that lack the, like, Michael Jordan sort of LeBron James star power, but win multiple championships, with them, because they were such a tight knit crew, and they knew they were important there. So. But I think, I guess in terms of last thoughts, I would love to hear just your number one insight for tonight. And it's a small enough group that we could just share. We don't have to put it in the chat, but as we close, that's probably a great place to end. While you're thinking, go ahead, Amy, sorry.
I just wanted to connect back to a sentence starter you gave us a while ago. It was like, I know I'm being successful when, and so you shared like all of these wonderful, beautiful things about yourself. So we all had time to create our list, and I wanted to make sure that I got all of the things that showed all of the things that I'm working on in my list, because I wanted to be impressive. But now I'm really focused, and the truth is there's three things that I'm always focused on. and all of the other stuff that's super wonderful and important and shows that I'm successful falls into that. So, you know, I'm a yoga teacher, so it's yoga-ish. I know I'm successful when I'm connecting to my purpose, remembering who I am, and being of service to others. So like I want to keep coming back to that. I start my morning with that, I end my night with that. But then when you asked that question, I was like, yes, and that is, you know, my diet, my exercise, my blah 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 blah. So, but really it's those three things for me. I wanted to come back to that. I love that you asked that question, and I was able to come up with a nice list of everything. But those are the three.
What a way to begin and end your day, you know, and a powerful reminder of what's most important, because you get swept up in the busyness, you know. So that's awesome. Thank you, Amy. As Mitch, Chris, and Mindy are thinking about their number one insight, I just wanted to share this one logistical detail. So my wife is really missing her family. We just had a ton of family over because of the holidays. So we made the decision to buy tickets to go fly to England to go spend the winter holidays, you know, with them. So we'll get tested and all that kind of stuff to be safe. And I even got my booster, what was that, last week, I guess. So, you know, as safe as you can be. But I share that because next week's will be quite late. We're leaving on the 11th, you know, so the next one will be midnight to 1 a.m. UK time. And I'd like to make a request if that could be the last meeting instead of two more, because I just don't like staying up so late and having to be like present and connected with everyone. It's hard. I did it for years, and that's 75% of the reason we moved back, you know. So I just wanted to put that on the table. Hopefully that works for everybody. If they let us fly, of course. So, but oh, you gotta run, Kristen. I saw you saying goodbye. But any last number one insights for Mindy or Mitch before we sign off?
For me, just the belonging thing. I kind of wear two hats. I teach, but have this organized binder thing, and I'm always trying to cultivate those relationships more than anything in that work when we come in and work with a school or a district or something. The people are so busy that you don't want to just be a nag, like trying to develop that. But I think there's something there that really resonates with people who aren't a part of maybe a mastermind, Danny, or something like that. And I appreciate that. And then with my students, I teach in this fully online async environment. I'm just like, how are you? This is my 4th year, and I'm like, that's all I try to do is develop relationships, period. Like, if you need help with content, of course I'm here, but like, how are you belonging? And the weird thing is, it seems to just that effort, putting that out in the world to them, seems to be connecting. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I just want them to know, like, hey, I'm here for you. I care about you. I want, like, but it all feels, to Amy's point, like almost contrived at times. And it's like, but it's really not. And all the feedback, I was just logging on here, and another teacher emailed me, and they're like, all my kids in your bio class just love being in your bio class. And I'm like, why? Like, what do we, we meet on Zoom every 2 weeks. And it's non-mandatory. Like, most of them don't even show, like, so that was a good reminder. My takeaway to stay cheesy.
Thanks, Mitch.
I don't know if that's cheesy, but okay.
I'm kidding.
Sounded really sound to me. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I do think the belonging and connectedness thing is so critical to everything else that can happen in a classroom setting, a school setting. So Just how do you keep getting better at that, so it's a journey.
Definitely a journey. Definitely a journey. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to spend this, this hour with you each week. And yeah, we'll get together next week for our last hurrah. So finish up the challenge chapter and the conclusion. FYI, I started recording the audiobook last week, and I have a session Wednesday at Subcat Studios in Syracuse, New York. So that's going really well and a lot of fun. So that might be of interest to you too. But really appreciate you all. And if you need anything between now and next week, please reach out. Have a great night.